Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, since we looked at the new Walthers DCC-friendly turnouts last week, I thought it appropriate that we follow up with a look at the new Peco Unifrog turnouts, which are also DCC-friendly. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our look at the new Peco Unifrog turnouts. And for this, I also have a Peco Electrofrog, the Walthers turnout that we looked at last week, and a MicroEngineering turnout, so that we can get a comparison amongst all three. And for that, I'm going to focus down here on the workbench, and we'll go ahead and take a look at them side by side. So let's get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go ahead and take a look at the new Unifrog turnout. Now this is the Unifrog right here, this is the Electrofrog, this is the Walthers, and this is the MicroEngineering. So you can see among these, the Unifrog is the shortest of them. So you could not directly replace one with the other without making some adjustments in your track work. But at least with the Peco products, they are the same length. So you could replace a Peco Electrofrog with one of the new Unifrogs. Other than that, these are very, very similar to the construction of the Walthers that I went over last week. So let's take a look at what we have here then. Well, right off, I'll point out here that the closure rail, point rail, is now one continuous rail, just like it is on the Walthers. Now, of course, on the old Electrofrog, they were a two-piece construction joined here at the contact between the point rail and the closure rail. They've got some sort of a little joiner clip in there that holds them together. On the old Walthers, they had a rail joiner connection, and the same thing here on the MicroEngineering. It's got a two-piece point rail closure rail with a rail joiner acting here to hold them together. So these, I think, are a great improvement. They look much more prototypical, and they've got that nice curved flowing line through there. That's going to give you much better performance in the long run. As with everybody else and previously on the Electrofrog, the Unifrog has that click in construction with respect to the points. So you can click them in and they're going to stay put. That's true for the old Electrofrog, the Walthers, and the MicroEngineering. Everyone is going with this spring action to hold the points in place, which is good. One thing I will note here, the frog itself and the guardrails here are shorter, much shorter than on the Walthers. I think it's debatable as to whether or not that is a real significant as far as these guardrails, or the frog itself is shorter than this guy here, and I think that's good. I think the frog should be as short as possible. Now, on the Electrofrog, if you remember, this was a combination type turnout. You could use it as an all-live turnout, or you could use it as a power routing turnout. So you could use the connection here at the points to collect power and power the entire assembly here. Or you could disconnect it here. There's a couple of little wires you can cut through, and that allows you to power these separately, but it gives you a frog that is in effect this long, about 3 inches long. And of course you could power it with this wire that's attached to the frog. Now on the Unifrog, they have gone ahead and isolated the frog for you. So that's it right there. There's a little plastic insert at this point that isolates the frog at that end, and then there's a little cut right here that isolates it up at this end. So they've basically done everything that I suggested in my previous videos for the Electrofrog, because I always said, take the Electrofrog, make a cut here with your Dremel, make a cut here with your Dremel, isolate that sucker and you'll be better off. So I'm glad they did that. I hope they got it from my video. The other thing here on the bottom, you can see they've used bonding jumpers between the stock rails and the closure rail to give power to that section. Same thing up here between the stock rails and the frog rails. They provide bonding jumpers. So everything is powered except for the frog itself. All you have to do is connect these two rails to running rails that are already powered. And that will pass power through the stock rail to the closure rails and to your frog rails, as well as the point rails themselves. So it's a great combination. It makes it so much easier to install and wire these. All you have to do is connect it to a powered set of tracks and you're ready to go. Of course, you can use this little wire here that is connected to the frog in order to provide power to the frog itself and power route it using either the switching mechanism built in to tortoise switch machines or to the DCC Concepts IP digital switch machines and various other methods, one of which I'll talk about in a video coming up. Now another thing that they've done here is, like on the Walthers Turnout, there's a couple of pilot holes here, and there are additional ones on the rest of the Turnout that you can drill out and use for track nails or spikes to hold your Turnout in place if you don't want to glue it down. So that's something, if you remember, Walthers has done that on their new ones as well. So that's a nice thing that they've done for modelers who still prefer not to glue their Turnouts in place. So what's different then from these others? Well, as I pointed out, the guardrails on the Walthers Turnouts are much longer than on the Unifrog. The frog itself, they're probably about the same length. I think that this one is a little bit larger on the Walthers, but it comes out very close. It's a little bit longer, but I'm not really concerned about that. Otherwise, they have very similar sizes of spikes, spike heads. They've all got the tie plates in place so that they really look very good prototypically. And these are based on a North American design. So they're not your European or your the UK type of track and turnouts. So there's a distinct difference between these and the versions that are made for the UK. And again, this is a Code 83 nickel silver rail. Somebody asked me about what the rail construction was on the Walthers Turnouts. As far as I know, I don't know of anybody making brass rails any longer. I don't know of anybody making steel rail. There might be some garden rail manufacturers that are still using aluminum rail. But for the most part, if you're talking about N-scale, HOS, all of these, they're primarily using nickel silver these days. Before we go on, I want to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It's simple, easy, and free. All you have to do is hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Thanks now. So basically then, the Walthers and the Peco are very, very similar in design in just about all areas. The Walthers is just a touch longer, as you can see. It's about 3 ties longer at this end. So you're not going to be able to swap this one in place of one of these, but you probably aren't going to want to. As far as the MicroEngineering goes, it is a much longer turnout. These are both number 6 turnouts, identical frog as far as that goes. But remember, this one has a cast bronze insert for the frog, and that means that you have to solder a wire to this little bronze dot on the bottom of the frog. And that can be a real pain in the neck until you've done a few of them and get used to it. It also means you have to be very careful when doing this that you do not overheat the plastic and get that frog out of place. So there's a lot of drawbacks to the MicroEngineering turnout. And I'll be using a lot more of, I think, the Walthers or the Peco on my layout in the future once I've used up all of my MicroEngineering. Unfortunately, though, I think I bought up enough to just about finish the layout. Okay, so that brings on another question. Someone asked me about price differences. How do these differ in price? So I got on the Walthers website and I looked up the MSRP for all of these. So here's how it breaks out. And I'll start with the MicroEngineering turnout. The MicroEngineering turnout has an MSRP of $31.60 each. Okay? Now I was able to get this for $22.04. So that's a 30% reduction in price. So if you watch the sales and they're in stock at the time, then you can get these for a very good price. Now, as far as the Walthers Turnout, the Walthers Turnout sells for $31.98. So it's essentially the same as the MicroEngineering Turnout. Discounted, and I got the ones that I purchased on sale. Walthers had them on sale. I got them from one of my dealers for $23.61 each. That's a 26% savings over the full MSRP. Now, what about the Peco? Okay, with the Peco, the MSRP at Walthers is $37.99. So they're significantly more expensive than either the Walthers or the MicroEngineering Turnouts. The price that I got them for, though, on sale was $26.06. In other words, a 31% reduction. So we're looking at something between $22 for the MicroEngineering, $23.50 for the Walthers, and $26 for the Peco. So depending on which one you like, you can probably, rationalize that as being about the same no matter which way you look at it. The thing that I am most concerned about with all of this now, though, is the supply. Will these guys be able to provide these on a regular basis, particularly the ones that are made overseas? I believe MicroEngineering is located in St. Louis, Missouri, and they get their rails, though, from, I believe, China or somewhere else in Asia. So recently, there was a backlog in their manufacturing because they could not get adequate supplies of rails. And then a week ago, they got their rails in, made a batch of these, and got a bunch of rail out to their various dealers. And my dealer was able to supply me with 30 more pieces of FlexTrack from MicroEngineering. So they're back in business as far as producing Turnouts and FlexTrack. So if you've been looking for it, get your orders in fast. And that's one thing that I'm afraid we're going to have to do in the future because of the problems with supply and a lot of this stuff coming in from China or overseas in the case of Peco. Availability might be a problem. So it's a good idea to buy in bulk when you can get it, particularly if it's on sale. So all of these have some drawbacks. I mean, Peco, it's made in England. I don't know where they get their rail and whether or not they have a good supplier for that and a good reliable supply and are going to be able to produce these for the American market. Because remember, the Unifrog design has been around now for several years. They started by making the Unifrog design for their in-scale customers here in the United States. And then they started producing for the UK market. And finally, we've now started seeing them appear in the HO scale for the US market. So it's a shot in the dark. If you like these, you better buy them when you can get them for your projects. Same thing with the Walthers, because they're made in China. It might be hit and miss as to how often they're going to get a shipload from China. With MicroEngineering, they're made in America, as I said, but they have to get their rails from China or at least from Asia, and they've had problems with that recently. So there are drawbacks to all of these. So as far as that goes, I'm going to go ahead and order what I need as far as the number 5 Walthers Turnouts to finish off one area that I had planned on using these and designed into my track plan. For the rest of the layout, I'll probably end up using these because I did buy a lot of these a year ago to be able to finish the layout because things were getting very unreliable due to COVID. So I went ahead and purchased a big batch while they were available. Well, that's a wrap with our look at the new Peco Unifrog Turnout for the North American market in a number 6 frog. I haven't checked to find out the full availability, whether or not these are available in number 5, number 7, or various other configurations. Take a look at the Walthers website, and you should be able to find out whether or not they've got what you need. And if they're still on sale and available, you might want to go ahead and stock up on a few of these. That's what I'm going to do. So coming up, I have a couple of different things that we can take a look at. One thing that I mentioned in the past was different ways of controlling the frog power using manual methods. And so I've got a couple of things that I managed to pick up from my dealer that we can take a look at, and we can move on with that. I also have some new things from DCC Concepts that I want to share with you. Plus, I have a few other things that I'm going to hold back on because I don't want to promise you something and get you all excited and have to stall on it. At any rate, that's it for today. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guy. Bye now.